Hello students, welcome to Medical 360. The NEET exam is just over, and one of the things that a lot of you need to understand is when you understand how many toppers would be there who would be scoring and how many marks would they be scoring at a top as a topper level, you will also know the kind of trend that will come down in terms of the minimum qualifying marks or the kind of score that you need to have to get into the government medical colleges. So what we are doing now, what we are attempting to do at this point in time is to first of all tell you what is the grapevine in terms of the kind of toppers that you will have and how many toppers would be there at one particular score. And this time it's extremely unusual. It is extremely shocking. I've never seen this kind of a trend ever, but it looks like there'll be a lot of toppers that will beat the best score that we ever had in the history of NEET examination. Let me explain to you what exactly is happening. And by the way, this is something that we reached out to multiple coaching institutions to understand. We actually reached out to all our sources in each of these coaching institutions to understand what's happening there, and we try to put this together, or we put it, try to collate it together. These very, very exclusive, so keep watching us. And before I present you the data, please do subscribe to Medical 360. And one of the things I must tell you is that we as Career 60, we always want to help you. So if you have any questions, we partnered with SRM University, which is one of the big medical colleges in Chennai. So what we're attempting to do is to answer each of your questions. So if you have any questions, write to us in the message box here. We'll take it up tomorrow and we'll start responding to that. So the entire idea is how do we ensure that you as a student are well responded to and you have greater clarity, because of my team will work on it and research on it. And I'm thanking the partner SRM University who actually enabled this entire thing to happen as a concept. So we're just looking at it from that perspective. Now let's talk of the toppers, getting into the data of how it works out, right? Now, if you look at the registration trend over the past few years for NEET, we actually had about 18.72 lakh in 22, 20.87 lakh registered students in 23, 24 lakh in 24, 22.7 lakh in 25, and 22.75 lakh in 26. So these 2 years are almost similar, right? Now the number of students who appeared also, when you look at it, it's 17.64 lakh here, it is 20.38 lakh here, it is 23.33 lakh here, it's 22 lakh here, and it's 22.05 lakh here. So again, 25 and 26 are almost similar in number of students that are there. What you need to understand is there is always a score deflation or a rank inflation that you'll have to face depending on the how many seats. Like when you talk of a cutoff and when you talk of a GMC cutoff, what you call government medical college cutoff, what happens if 1,000 seats are added in government medical colleges? To that extent, the rank increases. So what was, say, a cutoff of 22,000 last year would become 23,000. One, we're talking of score, but we also talk about the rank inflation that happens, assuming everything remains the same. Now, we're going to explore that also, because year on year, the government of India is working hard on ensuring that there are more medical seats that are available for the student community. And some of them are coming in the public space and some of them are coming in the private space. So we also need to understand that. We're going to do one more video very soon, right after this, to explain to you how many seats and how many seats are added also, right? Now, last year in 25, 12.36 lakh students qualified, which is about 56% of the students. So typically you will always have 56% because the extra numerator that keeps coming in, but about 12.36 lakh students qualified. So this year also you can at least expect 12.35 lakh students. So these are the kind of qualification number of students who will qualify that you will see this year also. By the way, for the 26 now, I'll keep filling in data. I'm not putting it there, but I'm going to keep filling in data for the things that are still uncertain. So keep watching me for that. Now, if you look at the paper level and the moderate and difficulty level of the paper, the NEET 26 is mimicking a bit of 23 and 24. And by the way, we all know that the 2025 paper was the most difficult paper in the history of NEET. And similarly, I can safely say at this point in time that the 2026 paper is most easy as compared to any other years as far as NEET is concerned. Maybe it will compete with 23, but not otherwise. So last year it was the most difficult paper. People had nightmares, students had nightmares, students start trying once they came out of the centers. This year, people came out with a big broad smile on their faces when they came out. But for one subject, which is chemistry, where people said there was the questions were long and it required lengthy answers and those kind of things. But otherwise, you actually could see students coming out of the examination hall with a big broad smile, and that is a good thing to have. So based on that, when we look at information, we're saying 23 it was easy, NEET 24 was also easy, 25 was difficult, 26 is easy. So we are now mimicking back to 23 and 24. In physics, it was easy last year, in 23. 24, it was moderate. 25, it is difficult. And now it is easy. So we're now talking about close to, 23. Chemistry was moderate in all the years. Biology was easy in 23, easy in 24, moderate and lengthy in 25, and easy but lengthy in 25, 26. So this has slightly become, right? And then paper length time is moderate across the thing, but in 25 it was high and moderate. So we are essentially dealing with a 23 kind of a scenario or 24 kind of a scenario where things were slightly more comfortable for the student community. Now, whenever you have that kind of a thing, remember that there is a massive score inflation. The number of students who will get more higher marks, it would be much more than what it used to happen in 25. In 25, I told you, it's the most difficult paper that students ever faced. In 26, it's the most easiest paper. So to that extent, whatever was the cutoff last year as scores, you will see a massive score inflation that will happen, which means that you need to score a lot more marks to be at the same place in terms of the rank. And we'll also explore that as we move along. What exactly happened over the years, right? In the year 2021, there were 3 people who were, who got a perfect score, which means they got 720 on 720. In 22, there was not a single one, which means not a single student got 720 on 720. In 23, there are 2 people who got 720 on 720, which is we call it a perfect score. In 2024, this is a year when the NEET scam happened. There were 17 students who got 720 on 720. That's a massive jump. And in 25, again, not a single student got a perfect score. Now we must remember this part of it, that only in 21, 23 and 24, you actually had a bunch of students who got a perfect score, and in 2024, you actually had 17 students who got a perfect score. But moving forward, when you look at data at this point in time, right, the number of students, what I mentioned here, in 21 there were 3 students, in 23 there were 2 students, and in 24 there's 17 students that we had. This year, our projection is that you will actually have between 20 and 25 students getting a perfect score of 720 on 720. Now that's a massive jump, which also means that if you're thinking that based on last year's score, a certain rank came and that will remain steady, it will not. There will be a massive rank deflation because there is a score inflation that is happening. The score inflation will be close to 4, 5, 6%. So when you look at it from that perspective, like last year, you actually had the OBC IC/ST cutoff was 113 and this was 144 last year, right? And before that it was 162 and before that it was 137. This year you will be dealing with about 160 as the minimum qualifying cutoff. That's our opinion, 160 marks. And you will have 20 to 25 toppers. Now, which means, by the way, when you look at it last year, the highest score was 686 on 720. Last year, the highest score was 680 on 760. Before that, it was 715 on 720 in 2022. But 686, now imagine, you actually had a student who topped the class at 686. Topped the entire 22, 23 lakh students who took the examination. This year at 686, you will just be surprised at the kind of rank that you'll get if you were to hold on to a 686 kind of a score. Now let me tell you what are the toppers that we are talking about. As I told you, we spoke to a lot of all the coaching institutions all over the country, and wherever we could, we also used the sources to get some kind of a grapevine data to put this together. The reason we were talking of toppers at this point in time is it also tells you or indicates to you what kind of score inflation you will have, because of which rank deflation also happens. And how would you deal with that? This is something that you must look for. We'll also do, as I said, immediately after this, a video which will tell you what kind of score will get you a government medical college and what kind of score you need to qualify. Both these things we'll talk as we move along. Right? Now, based on what we have understood from our grapevine, Alan will have 7 perfect scores. At least 7. That's the kind of grapevine that we're getting back. Akash is likely to have 5 and 6. Now, there is one question I told you about, where there is a thing. Assuming that thing doesn't go their way, it might actually fall down to 2 or 3 also. But our understanding is there will be about 5 to 6 is what we understand at this point in time. That's what at least our grapevine says. Guru Krupa and Sikar will have 4 of them. Remember last year they had quite a few, and Sikar has been doing extremely well as far as NEET is concerned. That trend continues. Guru, they're just based in Sikar, but they're likely to get about 4 students of theirs who are getting 720 on 720. Then you have another one, Sri Chaitanya, which as of now we understand it is 1, but it might grow. We are going center by center, so we at least now we know there is 1 who's there, but it might grow. We don't have Narayana and many other coaching institutions. Remember that. All we're talking of is where we've got some feedback. There might be many people where we did not get any feedback, so we don't have that here, right? Genesis classes has 1. PCP in Sikar has 1. In fact, PCP in Sikar for the 720 scorer, they've already declared a 51 lakh prize and a helicopter ride. Now, why they do that, I don't know. I do think that these are gimmicks that we should not do. Ultimately, students should be studying, and you can always support their thing by saying, okay, I'm going to give you a scholarship or something like that. This cash prize and all, I'm one of those people who are slightly, at least for students who are just 17, 18 coming out of education system, let us not corrupt them with money. But anyways, that's what it is, right? And CLC Sikar has 1. So as of now, what we have is, if you now look at it, is 7 plus 5, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. In our opinion, will be about 25 toppers is people who will get 720 on 720. Right? In 24 it was 17, before that it was 2. So every calculation that you do, you should understand that there are people who are likely to score more marks than what they did last year. Last year, the highest, the topper got 686 on 720. This year, 25 students are likely to get 720 and 720. So start factoring in that data. And by the way, this is something that we pretty much are certain that these numbers are almost there, because we do know who the students are also, who are likely to get the 720 and 720. But for one caveat here, where Akash, we think that, there is this question that is creating a problem, so it might be a challenge at some level. But we do think they'll be doing 720 and 720. Right? Now, based on that kind of a conversation that we're dealing with, you must start looking at a possible rank inflation, or rather rank deflation, because of the score inflation that you have. So if your assumption is that last year at 650 you got a GMC, or at 620 you got a GMC, and the same thing will continue, no, that will not be the case. And our purpose of showing the toppers here, the only purpose that we actually had was to make sure that you understand that we at Medical 360 want to drive you by data, drive you by information, drive you with objective analysis of what is likely to happen, so that you can plan better. I repeat, we're partnering with SRM University to make sure that all your questions are answered. So if you have any question, write to us in the message box here, and we'll try to take it up as early as possible, ideally tomorrow itself. And keep taking the best decision, use data, use information. But I do hope that you get into the best college possible. But please look at data, look at information before you make a choice. Thank you so much. Namaste.